Leora had always felt a little out of place in the crowded city. Skyscrapers of glass and steel reflected the early morning sunlight, but none of the people hurrying along the streets seemed to notice anything beyond their immediate routines. She liked it that way. She liked to watch, to observe, to think. It was why she had become a neuroscientist, studying the brain and its hidden patterns, searching for something beyond the ordinary, something that could explain the strange moments that sometimes flickered in her own mind. That morning, she walked into the lab with a sense of quiet anticipation. The lab was a maze of wires, monitors, and humming machines, the kind of place that made some people uncomfortable but made her feel at home. She had spent years trying to understand how the human brain processed information, how thoughts moved and mingled in the hidden networks of neurons. She believed the mind was capable of extraordinary things, though most people went through life ignoring that potential. As she moved past the first row of workstations, she noticed Cale sitting alone, hunched over a console. He was one of the engineers who worked on the lab's interface systems, quiet, precise, and focused. Unlike the others, he didn't chat or laugh loudly or rush through tasks. He seemed calm in a way that Leora had always found unusual, almost magnetic. And today, for reasons she didn't understand, she felt drawn to him. She didn't think about it too much at first. People sometimes caught her attention, and she often studied them in the same way she studied the brain, quietly, methodically, looking for patterns. But then something strange happened. As she passed by Cale's desk, she felt a flicker, a sudden, vivid impression in her mind. It wasn't a thought she had herself. It wasn't a memory she recognized, and yet it was real, as if someone else's mind had pressed itself gently against hers. She stumbled slightly, shaking her head, trying to clear it. Cale looked up briefly, his gray eyes meeting hers. For a moment, she felt a flash of his thoughts, quick, unformed, and jumbled at first, but there. She saw images of circuits, equations, a device that seemed to glow in his mind, a strange pattern of energy she didn't recognize. Then the flicker was gone. Leora's heart raced. She tried to focus on her work, on the simple task of analyzing neural data, but she couldn't. The memory of that sudden insight, someone else's thought, lingered. She wondered if she was imagining it. Her rational mind told her it must be fatigue or a trick of concentration, but a deeper part of her whispered that it was something else, something new. Over the next few days, it happened again. Whenever she looked at Cale, just briefly, she caught pieces of his thoughts. At first, they were fragmented, a diagram here, a number there, but gradually they became more coherent. She could sense his focus, his careful calculations, and sometimes when he thought about problems deeply, she even felt the subtle tension in his mind, the excitement when a solution began to take shape. Leora was careful. She did not reveal what she was experiencing. She wasn't sure if it was even possible. She had read every paper on neurological phenomena, psychic studies, and cognitive anomalies, but nothing explained what she was feeling. She called it the flicker in her mind, and she observed it quietly, noting the conditions under which it appeared. Eye contact seemed to trigger it, but not every glance. His mood, his focus, even the background noise seemed to affect it. One afternoon, she found herself standing near Cale as he worked on a complex interface. The lab was quiet except for the hum of machinery. She watched his fingers move over the keyboard, precise and confident, and felt that familiar flicker in her mind. This time, it was stronger, more vivid. She saw a series of symbols forming a pattern, a device that could read signals beyond the ordinary human range, and then she saw his intention. He was testing something he hadn't told anyone about, a private project. Leora's curiosity overcame her caution. She leaned slightly closer, not touching him, not wanting him to notice, but trying to follow the trail of his thoughts. And then, as if sensing her focus, Cale paused. He tilted his head slightly and for the first time looked directly at her. Her heart skipped. She felt exposed, yet strangely calm. And then something extraordinary happened. Instead of shutting her out, he left a small, deliberate thought in his mind, almost like a breadcrumb. A question, a challenge. Something only someone who could sense him might understand. Leora smiled a little nervously. This was no longer random. Cale had noticed her, and whatever was happening between their minds was no longer an accident. Over the next week, Leora observed him more closely. She followed his thoughts in small doses, careful not to overwhelm herself. She discovered that Cale was working on a device unlike anything she had seen. It seemed to enhance the brain's ability to detect patterns, almost like a bridge between human thought and signals from the outside world. She didn't understand all of it yet, but the flickers she saw were enough to convince her that he was onto something extraordinary. She also noticed something else. Kale was not selfish with his thoughts. Unlike many people whose minds were cluttered with distraction, doubt, and fear, his mind was focused, disciplined, and clear. There was a calm intelligence there, a patience and creativity that she found both inspiring and humbling. One evening, as the lab emptied and the sun cast long shadows across the room, Leora stayed behind. Kale was still at his desk, adjusting the device he had been building in secret. She felt the familiar pull in her mind and decided to take a risk. She sent a thought of her own, not loud, not invasive, just a gentle projection. "I see you." Then she felt a response, a flicker in her mind, careful and deliberate. Kale was aware, and instead of fear or confusion, there was curiosity. A connection had been formed, tentative but real. They began a silent dialogue, sharing small ideas and observations without words. She realized that her ability was not just a trick of perception. It was a window into a mind that had chosen to reach out. And Kale's willingness to communicate, even in this unusual way, told her that he trusted her, or at least that he was willing to see if she could meet him on equal terms. Over the following days, the connection deepened. Leora discovered that Kale had been working for months, maybe years, on a way to extend human cognition, to allow humans to perceive things that were normally invisible, to understand patterns and signals that the ordinary mind would miss. And yet he had done it in secret, careful not to draw attention. Leora understood why. The world was not ready for such knowledge. Governments and corporations might have exploited it or feared it. But she also knew that the potential was incredible. If humans could develop the ability to see beyond their usual limits, to understand more, to learn faster, to connect in ways previously impossible, the world would change. And in the quiet moments of the lab, when only the hum of machines and the soft glow of screens filled the room, Leora and Kale explored that potential together. They communicated without words, sharing glimpses of ideas, images of patterns, feelings of curiosity and wonder. And in those moments, Leora realized something else. She admired Kale not just for his mind, but for the care with which he approached the world. He was cautious but courageous. He was private but willing to share. He was human in every sense that mattered. One night, after hours of quiet work, Leora sat back and looked at him. He was adjusting the device, checking readings, completely absorbed, and she felt the flicker in her mind stronger than ever. She didn't need to guess anymore. She knew what it meant. Kale's mind was open, waiting for someone to understand, to help, to take the next step. She smiled softly. For the first time, she felt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Something extraordinary was beginning, and she was part of it. She didn't know what it would lead to or how far it would go, but she knew one thing. She had discovered a mind that could change the world. And in discovering it, she had also discovered something about herself. The city outside moved on as always. People hurried, oblivious to the extraordinary events unfolding in a quiet lab. But inside, in the calm glow of monitors and machines, two minds were beginning to connect in a way that was unlike anything either of them had experienced. The future was waiting, and for the first time, Leora felt ready to meet it. Over the next few days, Leora's mind continued to dance with flashes of Kale's thoughts. Each flicker revealed more than she expected. His focus, his ideas, the careful calculations, and sometimes even the quiet moments of doubt he didn't let anyone see. It was fascinating, like peering into a book that no one had yet published, filled with knowledge and imagination. She realized that Kale was not just a brilliant engineer. He was someone thinking about possibilities that were far beyond what most humans even considered. One morning, she arrived at the lab to find Kale already there. The usual hum of machines was accompanied by the low, almost musical hum of a new device on his desk. It was small, covered in wires and blinking lights, yet it seemed alive, as if it had a presence of its own. Leora felt the familiar pull in her mind, and the flicker was stronger than ever. She could see the device in Kale's thoughts, but also something else, a purpose, a secret goal that he had been hiding from everyone. Curiosity and caution warred inside her. She knew she could see his thoughts, yet she also knew she needed to respect him. But the questions were too strong. She leaned slightly closer, letting her mind touch his just enough to follow the trail. She saw calculations, sequences, patterns, and then a vision. A device that could extend the human mind's ability to sense, to connect, to understand beyond ordinary perception. And she realized what it was. Kale had been working in secret on a cognitive enhancer, a device that could allow humans to perceive things that were normally invisible, signals, patterns, information that ordinary senses could not detect. Leora's heart raced. She understood the implications immediately. If Kale succeeded, humanity could gain abilities no one had thought possible. They could understand complex systems faster, detect threats earlier, learn from patterns in ways previously unimaginable. But she also understood why he had kept it secret. Such a device could be dangerous in the wrong hands, and the world was not ready for it. Kale noticed her gaze. Instead of alarm, there was calm in his eyes and then a flicker, a deliberate message in his mind sent just for her. It was a question, "Can you understand what I'm trying to do?" Leora smiled softly. She responded in kind, sending a mental note, "Yes, and I want to help." From that moment, a silent partnership began. They started experimenting, not with words, but with thoughts. Leora followed Kale's mental trail carefully, observing how he tested the device, how he measured responses, how he adjusted its energy flows and signal patterns. She saw the intensity in his mind when a test succeeded, and the subtle disappointment when it failed. She realized he had poured years of thought, effort, and careful planning into this project, and that it meant more to him than she could yet understand. One afternoon, Kale decided to test the device in a more controlled way. Leora watched as he placed it on the desk, wires running from it to monitors that displayed streams of data. She felt the flicker stronger than ever. It was not just a connection, it was almost as if the device was reaching out to her mind directly, showing her the patterns he had created. "You're observing," Kale said softly, turning to her. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, yet she felt the weight of it in her mind. "Yes," she admitted, keeping her tone calm. "But I think I can help." He adjusted a dial and the device hummed louder. Leora felt the flow of energy, subtle and complex, as images of circuits and abstract patterns filled her mind. She understood then that this device was designed not just to measure thought, but to expand it, to allow humans to process information at speeds and depths they could never reach alone. For hours, they worked silently, minds touching through flickers and flashes, communicating without words. Leora learned to anticipate Kale's movements, to feel when a calculation was about to succeed or fail. Kale learned to trust her insight, to see how she could understand his goals without explanation. It was an unspoken bond, formed in the quiet spaces between thoughts, stronger than anything either of them had expected. Late in the evening, as the lab emptied and the city outside settled into the soft glow of streetlights, Leora finally spoke aloud. "Kale, why are you doing this in secret?" "People fear what they cannot understand. If this fell into the wrong hands, it could be misused. But I think it's time someone saw it, someone who can understand." He paused, then added, "And I think that someone is you." The device he had been building in secret was more than just an invention. It was a bridge to something new, something that could change what it meant to be human. Over the following week, they continued their work. Leora learned to see the device through Kale's mind, to anticipate its signals, to understand its subtle feedback loops. She realized that while the device was powerful, it was not enough on its own. It required a human mind to guide it, to interpret its patterns, to make decisions that a machine could not. One evening, as they prepared for another test, Leora felt a flicker she had never experienced before. It was not just Kale's thoughts this time. It was a combination of their minds, merging in a way that felt almost physical. She could see possibilities, combinations of patterns and energy flows, and she realized that together they were stronger than the device alone. Kale noticed her surprise. "It's responding to both of us," he said, his voice steady but tinged with wonder. "I didn't know it could do that. Or worse, they could misuse it." Leora began to see not just Kale's mind, but how his mind worked, how he approached problems, how he measured possibilities, how he balanced caution with curiosity. She realized then that the true power of the device was not in the technology alone, but in the combination of human minds. Intelligence, creativity, intuition, all of it mattered. And humans, with their unpredictability and imagination, could do things machines never could. One night after a particularly successful test, Leora and Kale sat in the quiet lab, exhausted but exhilarated. The device hummed softly, lights blinking in a steady rhythm. Leora felt the familiar flicker, stronger than ever, as if the device itself were alive, responding to their minds. "I can feel it," she said softly. "It's like it's listening, learning." If the device worked as they hoped, humans could gain abilities that would allow them to see the world in entirely new ways. They could understand patterns, predict outcomes, communicate more effectively, maybe even perceive things that had been invisible until now. And yet, she also understood the risk. Such power could be dangerous if misused. They had to be careful, thoughtful, deliberate. That was why Kale had kept it secret. That was why he had trusted her mind, her ability to see his thoughts, before allowing her to participate fully. For the first time, Leora felt a sense of purpose deeper than anything she had known. She was not just a scientist observing data or running experiments. She was part of a partnership, part of something that could redefine humanity's future. And she knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, full of unknowns, but also full of possibilities. They worked late into the night, minds entwined with the device, communicating in ways that words could never capture. And as the city outside slept, Leora felt a profound sense of connection, not just with Kale, but with the potential of what humanity could become. For the first time, she understood that this was only the beginning. The flickers in her mind, the shared thoughts, the device itself, all of it pointed toward something larger, something that could change the way humans understood themselves and the universe. And she was ready to take that step, side by side with Kale, into a future no one had yet imagined. The days that followed were a mixture of quiet observation and careful experimentation. Leora's ability to see Kale's thoughts had become stronger, and now she could not only sense his ideas but almost feel the emotions behind them. Excitement, caution, hope, and determination all moved through his mind like currents in a river. She found herself drawn into that flow, participating without speaking, understanding without asking. It was strange but not frightening. She felt connected, as if their minds had found a rhythm together. One afternoon, as Kale worked on the device, she noticed a new pattern in his thoughts. Unlike before, these were not just calculations or technical adjustments. They were visions, scenarios, possibilities. Images of distant stars, faint signals reaching Earth, waves of energy moving through space. Leora blinked, surprised. She had seen many things in Kale's mind, but never anything like this. He had been receiving signals, subtle messages from deep space that were barely perceptible to ordinary instruments. Kale's device, she realized, could detect these signals and even begin to interpret them. Her heart raced. If Kale was right, then these were not random cosmic noises. They were structured, intentional, possibly sent by intelligent beings. For hours, she followed his mental trail, watching the patterns take shape. He had been working quietly on this, building a system to decode the signals and understand their meaning. Leora's mind raced with possibilities. If Kale's interpretations were correct, humanity might be on the verge of discovering life beyond Earth, not just life, but intelligence capable of communication. When Kale finally spoke aloud, his voice was calm, almost casual. "You're seeing this too, aren't you? Or worse, try to control it before it's ready. But I think it's time someone new, someone who can understand, someone who can help." Over the next few days, they worked together more closely than ever. Leora observed the patterns Kale's device detected, feeling them in her mind as if they were threads she could follow. She began to notice the subtleties, the way the signals repeated, the faint harmonics that hinted at a structure, a purpose. And she understood something Kale had not yet said aloud. These were not threats. These were attempts at communication. One evening, as the lab emptied and the city outside grew quiet, Leora and Kale sat across from each other, the device humming softly between them. "Do you realize what this means?" she asked, almost whispering. Kale nodded slowly. "It means we have a chance to show humanity's potential, but it also means we are responsible, we cannot fail. If we misinterpret these signals, if we make the wrong move, it could be catastrophic." She felt a deep respect for him, but also a quiet fear. The stakes were higher than anything she had ever imagined. They began testing the device, carefully, slowly. Leora focused on observing Kale's thoughts as he adjusted the settings, monitored the outputs, and interpreted the signals. She realized that the device did not just detect energy or patterns, it was capable of translating intention. And Kale's mind was the key. Without his understanding, the signals were just noise. With his insight, they became messages, fragments of meaning reaching across the void of space. For the first time, Leora felt a sense of true awe. She had studied the human mind for years, but she had never imagined it could be used like this. To detect intelligence across the stars, to bridge the gap between worlds, to show that humans were capable of more than they had ever known. It was incredible, and she was part of it. One night, as they worked late into the evening, Leora felt a sudden surge in her mind. The flicker was stronger than ever, more vivid, more complex. She realized that Kale had found something, a message, perhaps, or a pattern so clear that it could no longer be ignored. She leaned closer, not touching the device, letting her mind follow the currents. In that moment, she understood the scale of what Kale had been preparing for. The signals were not random. They were structured, deliberate, and intelligent. And Kale had been ready, quietly building the tools and understanding needed to interpret them. She felt a rush of admiration. He had trusted her mind, her insight, to share this secret. And now, together, they were on the edge of a discovery that could change everything. Over the next few days, the work intensified. Leora and Kale spent long hours testing the device, interpreting signals, and refining their methods. The connection between their minds grew stronger, allowing them to anticipate each other's thoughts and understand each other in ways words could never capture. She began to feel not just a partnership, but a profound collaboration, a merging of understanding that transcended ordinary communication. One afternoon, as the signals became clearer, Leora realized something extraordinary. The patterns suggested a level of intelligence that was not only advanced but also curious about humanity, about the planet, about the minds on Earth. It was a reminder that intelligence, wherever it existed, shared certain traits: observation, pattern recognition, and the desire to understand. And humans, she realized, had those traits in abundance. Kale noticed her reaction. "You're thinking about humanity's potential," he said, almost as if reading her mind aloud. "I am," Leora admitted. "If we can interpret these signals, it could show that humans are capable of more than we imagine. That our minds, our creativity, our adaptability, it's our strength. Waiting too long could mean losing the opportunity." As they continued their work, Leora discovered that the device responded not just to Kale's mind, but to their combined focus. When they thought together, when their minds synchronized, the patterns became clearer, the signals more understandable. She realized that human intuition, creativity, and empathy were as important as any calculation. The device amplified not just thought, but understanding, and humans were its natural guides. One evening, after a particularly successful session, Leora and Kale sat back, exhausted but exhilarated. The device hummed softly, lights blinking in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Leora felt the flicker stronger than ever, a pulse that connected her not just to Kale, but to the potential they were uncovering. "Do you realize what we're doing?" she asked softly. Kale looked at her, his expression calm but intense. "Yes, we're preparing humanity for something extraordinary, and we're proving something else, something I've always believed. Humans are capable of more than anyone expects. Our minds, our creativity, it's our edge." Over the following days, they refined the device further, testing it with increasingly complex signals, exploring patterns that reached beyond Earth, and preparing for the moment when they might attempt communication. Leora realized that the work was not just about technology. It was about humans themselves. Their imagination, intuition, and creativity were what made the device truly powerful. And she felt a growing admiration for Kale, not just for his intelligence, but for the care and foresight with which he approached every step. One night, as they finished a long session, Leora felt the strongest flicker yet. It was not just Kale's thoughts, not just the device's patterns. It was something larger, something that seemed almost alive. She looked at Kale, her mind racing. I think they're responding. Something is happening." They were no longer just scientists in a lab. They were pioneers, explorers of intelligence, bridges between humanity and the unknown. And whatever came next, they would face it together, with courage, curiosity, and the human spirit guiding them forward. The days that followed were a blur of preparation. Leora and Kale worked tirelessly, refining the device, testing the signals, and synchronizing their minds more closely than ever. Each session brought new understanding, but also new questions. The intelligence behind the signals was growing clearer, yet unpredictable. Patterns shifted in ways that no machine alone could anticipate. Leora realized that the device amplified not just calculation, but intuition. Human thought, curious, flexible, emotional, was the missing key. Kale noticed it too. "It's learning from us," he said one afternoon, eyes fixed on the screens. "It's responding to our focus, our creativity, our approach. This isn't just technology, it's a bridge between minds. It's responding to humanity itself. The way we think, the way we imagine, it's what makes it work." It was as if they had recognized that our strength lay not in tools or speed, but in thought itself. Over the next week, they tested more aggressively. They sent back subtle, structured responses using the device, small pulses of intention encoded in thought patterns. Leora felt a thrill each time she synchronized with Kale, each time they managed to match their focus perfectly. They were not only decoding the signals, they were engaging with them, responding, creating a dialogue across the void of space. But the work was exhausting. The mental strain was unlike anything Leora had experienced. Following Kale's thoughts, interpreting the signals, projecting their combined ideas through the device, it took concentration, endurance, and trust. She often felt her mind ache, a dull pressure behind her eyes, as if the device were stretching the limits of what her neurons could handle. Yet she never complained. The thrill of discovery and the possibility of first contact made every discomfort worthwhile. Kale was aware of it too. He would occasionally pause, gently guiding her, allowing her mind to rest while he adjusted the signals, recalibrating the device. His care was meticulous, precise, but also deeply human. Leora found herself admiring him more with each session, not just his brilliance, but the patience and empathy with which he approached both the work and her. One evening, as the city outside faded into the quiet hum of night, they reached a breakthrough. The signals, once irregular and chaotic, began forming a pattern that could be interpreted consistently. Leora felt the flicker in her mind stronger than ever, a pulse that resonated through both her thoughts and Kale's. For the first time, she sensed not just data but intention, something alive and aware. Kale's eyes widened slightly. It's responding to us. It recognizes the patterns we're sending. Our thoughts, our humanity, it's what it understands. We're communicating. Only by combining logic, intuition, and emotion could they reach it. At times, the process was frustrating. Patterns they sent went unacknowledged. Signals they expected to match seemed to shift unpredictably. Leora felt waves of doubt, wondering if they were overreaching, if they had misunderstood something fundamental. But Kale remained calm, guiding her through each setback with quiet confidence. We're learning, he reminded her. Every attempt, every failure teaches us something. It's part of the process. Colors, shapes, and structures that defied ordinary understanding filled her mind. And then, beneath the chaos, she sensed clarity, an unmistakable response. The intelligence was acknowledging their effort. It was not only aware of them, it was communicating back. Kale leaned forward, eyes wide with excitement. It's responding, we did it. Not just responding, it's understanding. Our thoughts, our creativity, our perspective, it's recognizing them. They were standing on the edge of something incredible, something that could redefine what it meant to be human. As the days passed, the dialogue grew more sophisticated. Leora and Kale experimented with more complex structures, layering intention, curiosity, and abstract ideas into their communications. The alien intelligence responded in kind, sending back patterns that were not simply signals but concepts, ideas that hinted at a mind both brilliant and vast. Leora was exhilarated. Every session felt like stepping further into a vast, unexplored world, and every success brought new questions and possibilities. One night, exhausted but exhilarated, they sat quietly in the lab. The device hummed softly between them, its lights pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Leora felt the familiar flicker in her mind, stronger than ever, connecting her and Kale in ways words could never capture. "Do you realize what this means?" she whispered. Kale's eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Yes. It means that humanity has a chance to be seen, to be understood, in ways no one expected. And it also means that we are responsible. We must guide this carefully, thoughtfully, and with respect for what we are encountering." They were not only interpreting signals, they were establishing first contact, using the full range of human thought and creativity as their tool. The following week, they faced a new challenge. The intelligence seemed to test them, sending signals that were more complex, more abstract, requiring deeper understanding and sharper coordination. Leora realized that this was intentional. The alien mind was probing, exploring the capabilities of human thought, pushing them to see further, to imagine more. Kale noticed it too. "It's testing us," he said calmly. "Not to harm us, but to see how far our minds can reach. It wants to know what humans are capable of." This was exactly what she had hoped for, not just communication, but recognition, understanding, and the challenge to grow. She and Kale pushed their minds further, synchronizing more closely, experimenting with increasingly complex ideas, and guiding the intelligence step by step toward understanding. Finally, one evening, they reached a moment of clarity. The signals aligned, forming a coherent structure that was unmistakably deliberate. Leora felt the flicker in her mind surge, a wave of recognition, as if the intelligence itself was acknowledging them fully. She glanced at Kale, who smiled quietly, eyes bright with achievement. "It's responding to us directly," he said. "Our thoughts, our humanity, it's what matters." It was not technology alone, not machines or speed, but the human mind itself, creative, flexible, empathetic, and unpredictable, that had made the connection possible. They spent hours reflecting on what they had accomplished. The device had worked, but it was their minds, their creativity and intuition that had truly bridged the gap. Leora felt a surge of pride and hope. Humanity had a chance not just to survive, but to show its potential in ways that no one had imagined. As they left the lab that night, stepping into the quiet city streets, Leora felt a deep sense of connection, not only to Kale but to the possibility of humanity itself. The intelligence had recognized them, understood them, and responded. And in doing so, it had acknowledged what they had always known, that humans underestimated and overlooked were capable of extraordinary things. For the first time, Leora felt the full weight of what they had begun. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead was clear. They had proven that humanity's mind, its creativity, empathy, and curiosity, was its greatest strength. And as she walked beside Kale, she knew that together, they would guide humanity toward a future that no one had dared to imagine. The lab was quiet that night, filled only with the soft hum of the device and the faint glow of monitors. Leora and Kale sat across from each other, their minds entwined with the signals they had been decoding for weeks. Each pulse of the device now felt like a heartbeat, a bridge stretching across the void of space to an intelligence far beyond their world. For the first time, the possibility of true first contact seemed within reach. Kale adjusted a dial, and the device hummed more steadily, as if sensing their readiness. "This is it," he said softly, not as a declaration, but as a shared acknowledgement. "We've prepared for this, we understand the patterns, and we've learned that our humanity is what matters most." She felt it flow like a current from her mind through Kale's into the device, and then outward toward the intelligence they had come to recognize. It was not words, not symbols, but intention, pure human intention. For a moment, nothing happened. Leora felt her pulse quicken, and Kale's steady presence beside her was the only anchor she had. Then, slowly, a response emerged. A flicker at first, then patterns forming, coherent and deliberate, not random but thoughtful. The intelligence was acknowledging them. It was not just receiving their thought, it was engaging, interpreting, and responding. Leora felt a rush of awe. Colors, shapes, and images filled her mind, concepts that transcended ordinary understanding, yet somehow familiar. The intelligence was showing them its world, its perspective, its curiosity about humanity. She realized that it was as eager to learn as they were, bridging the vast gulf of space not with technology, but with comprehension, empathy, and intention. Kale's eyes met hers, wide with excitement. "It's working. It's really working. We're communicating." The intelligence responded, forming patterns that suggested understanding, recognition, and even a hint of emotion, though not like human emotion, something different, alien, yet alive. Leora realized something extraordinary. The intelligence was not merely advanced, it was curious. It did not act as a machine, nor as an observer. It was engaging with humanity as a partner, responding to creativity, intuition, and empathy rather than calculations alone. And that was the true HFY moment. Humans, often underestimated, had bridged the impossible gap through the very qualities that made them human. As the dialogue progressed, they began to recognize subtle lessons hidden within the responses. The intelligence seemed to test their understanding, offering puzzles and abstract ideas that required flexibility, imagination, and cooperation to interpret. Leora and Kale solved them not through brute logic, but by combining intuition with reasoning, imagination with patience. Each success deepened the connection, and each failure taught them something new. At one point, Leora felt a flicker unlike any before. The intelligence was not merely communicating, it was sharing a perspective, a view of the universe that expanded beyond their understanding. She glimpsed vast structures, patterns of energy and life interwoven across the cosmos, not chaotic but harmonized. She realized that humans were seeing for the first time what the intelligence perceived, and that it was inviting them to participate in this understanding. Kale noticed her reaction. "It's giving us knowledge," he whispered. "Not instructions, not commands, insight. It's trusting us with understanding." Humanity, underestimated and often dismissed, was being acknowledged as worthy of trust and collaboration. The intelligence had seen something in them, curiosity, creativity, and the unpredictable spark that machines and even some advanced intelligences could not replicate. Humans were unique, and in this moment, that uniqueness was their greatest strength. The lab became a cocoon of discovery. They worked in synchrony, their thoughts blending as they refined their communication. Leora felt the device as an extension of her own mind, a conduit not just to the intelligence but to Kale, to their shared understanding. Every pulse, every flicker, every surge of pattern brought them closer, teaching them about the universe, about each other, and about the extraordinary capabilities of the human mind. One night, as the signals stabilized into a coherent and flowing pattern, Leora realized the magnitude of what they had achieved. They were no longer merely decoding messages, they were conversing. Humanity, for all its smallness in the vast cosmos, had become a participant, recognized and respected by an intelligence that dwarfed anything they had imagined. Kale's expression mirrored her awe. "We've done it," he said quietly. "We've shown that humans were capable of more than anyone expects. Our minds, our creativity, it matters." They had bridged the impossible gap, using nothing but thought, imagination, and trust. Technology had amplified the connection, but it was their humanity that had made it possible. They were living proof that the human mind, often underestimated, could rise to meet challenges far beyond Earth. Over the next few sessions, they explored further. The intelligence responded to subtle changes in focus, intention, and creative thought. Leora discovered that even small gestures, thoughts of hope, curiosity, and collaboration, had powerful effects. The intelligence seemed to recognize the difference between calculated patterns and the human spark, unpredictability, creativity, empathy. Humans had shown that their greatest strength was not in machines, but in their minds. Kale noticed her reflections. "It's as if it's learning from us," he said softly. "Not just understanding, but adapting. It recognizes the value of human thought, the very thing we often take for granted." She realized that this moment, first contact achieved not through weapons, not through dominance, but through understanding, was the ultimate HFY expression. Humanity, underestimated and overlooked, had proven its worth not by force, but by thought, by creativity, by the courage to explore the unknown. As they continued, Leora felt a profound sense of responsibility. They had opened a bridge, a line of communication, and humanity now had the chance to define itself on a cosmic stage. She looked at Kale, realizing that they were not only partners in discovery, but custodians of something far greater than themselves. Finally, as the lab lights dimmed and the city outside settled into quiet, Leora and Kale sent one last message for the night, a thought expressing hope, curiosity, and peace. It was simple yet profound, a reflection of humanity at its best. She felt the response almost immediately, warm, expansive, and clear. The intelligence acknowledged them fully. Kale leaned back, exhaustion and exhilaration mingling on his face. "We've done it," he said, voice calm but heavy with meaning. "We've shown them humanity, and we've shown ourselves what we can do." And now, in this moment, they had achieved something that could change the course of history. Humanity had proven that it was capable of extraordinary thought, creativity, and understanding, even in the face of the vast unknown. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the steady hum of the device and feeling the flicker of connection in their minds. Leora realized that this was more than first contact. It was a partnership, a mutual recognition, a promise that humans and the intelligence could learn from one another. And that was a victory that no weapon or machine could ever achieve. As dawn approached, Leora looked out at the city, thinking of the people who went about their lives oblivious to the extraordinary events unfolding in the quiet lab. Humanity's moment of recognition had begun, and though most would not yet know it, the path forward had been opened. Humans, underestimated and overlooked, had proven their greatest strength lay not in force or tools, but in thought, creativity, and courage. She glanced at Kale, their minds still intertwined in the silent language of understanding. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. Kale smiled. "Yes, but it's a beginning that proves something important. Humans are remarkable. And now the universe knows it too." And together they would continue to explore, to learn, and to define the role of humans in the vast, mysterious universe. The device hummed quietly, a bridge between minds and worlds, a testament to the power of human thought. Leora and Kale knew that what they had accomplished was not just a scientific breakthrough, it was the ultimate expression of HFY. Humanity, underestimated for so long, had risen to meet the unknown, and in doing so had shown that its mind, creativity, and courage were its greatest gifts. And as they left the lab that morning, stepping into the first light of a new day, Leora felt it clearly. The future belonged to those who dared to think, to imagine, and to believe. Humanity had been seen, acknowledged, and valued. And that recognition, hard-earned and extraordinary, was only the beginning.